Welcome to Carpool Conversations, where our goal is to help equip parents to have Christ-centered, meaningful conversations with their kids. I'm Amy Lowe.
And I am Sara Jones. And today we're going to be talking about helping Gen Z's faith stick.
Sara, there's been a lot of research that just came out about Gen Z from Barna Research Group, and I've been reading it and listening to messages about it, unpacking it with my team, really, because we work with Gen Z as summer camps, and we want to learn more about them, and it's been really helpful. And in case you are wondering, okay, when is Gen Z? What is Gen Z? They are people that were born between 1999 and 2015. 1999 and 2015. So let's be thinking about our kids. Are they in that age group? For me, Sara, both of mine are in that age group. They're both Gen Z, but not yours.
No,
right?
my oldest just misses the cutoff. Okay. She's actually in Alpha.
Which is the next one.
Yes. So they say Alpha kids are being raised by millennials. And I'm a millennial.
Got it.
And they're called mini millennials. So
I did not know that.
Yeah.
Fun.
But it's called the Alpha generation.
Alpha.
Yeah.
So if you have Alpha kids, I'm sure that this will still be helpful to you, but really the laser focus of the research has been on this Gen Z group. And we're going to be discussing what that research has unpacked for everybody and specifically how to make the faith of this generation stick.
Yes. And I'm really excited to announce we actually have a guest who has had 15 years of experience with this generation. So his name is David Blanchard. So thank you so much for being here with us today.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
Here.
Yeah. So I'm just going to give everyone a little bit about who you are. So David Blanchard, he is the director of the fellows at Impact 360, which is a sister organization to WinShape Foundation. So you're passionate about your work. You've spent the last 15 years working with college-age students in the area of leadership and discipleship. You have a master's in change leadership from Columbia University and a BS in youth ministry, family and culture of Columbia International University. That is a mouthful. So
it is, yeah.
So you are married to your wife, Melva, and you have 3 young boys at home. So you're raising some men in your house. So,
That's right.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about your family and kind of like the stage of parenting that you're in.
Sure. Yeah, I appreciate that. So my kids also would be in that Gen Alpha range. So I'm looking forward to whenever we get to the research on that generation. That's probably a little early. But I have 3 boys, like you said. They are 6, 4, and 2. So we are just in the best kind of chaos at our house right now. It is wild and crazy and tons of fun and exhausting. My wife, Melva, is amazing. I met her while I was working with LifeShape Brazil, kind of another sister connected organization of ours. And so she's Brazilian. We get to spend a few weeks out of the year down there typically, which is a lot of fun. Right as it starts to get cold in Georgia, we take off and head down there. And our Impact 360 students are down there too. So we get to kind of double up there, which is a lot of fun.
That's awesome. Yeah. Boys 6, 4, and 2. I love that you say it's chaos. Like I feel that. I only have 2 kids and it is chaos most of the time.
And a dog.
And 2 dogs and chickens and a fish. Yeah. And, I'd love to add a kitten, but my husband's allergic. So we can't do that yet. But it is chaos. You're right. So thanks for being here. And you actually help start. So we do an international project through WinShape camps, and you got to help start that. You were kind of like the bridge between Impact, y'all's international, and then WinShape launching camp in Brazil, really.
That's right. So I moved to Brazil in 2012, and WinShape at that time was already doing a 2-week experience for their summer staff, a spring break trip where they would go and do day camp for churches in Brazil. And around that time, they were hoping to expand it to a full summer camp. And so I got to be a part of of building that with a really amazing team from WinShape. We had an all-star team that summer, and they were brave to come down and spend 6 weeks. I think all of them got sick at some point, but really kind of pioneered that. And the really fun thing, Sarah, from that was just a couple years later, I was at a church, one of the churches that we had gone to. And the pastor didn't know I was going to be there, but he saw me in the back and he said, David's here. If you remember, he worked with WinShape camps. Would you mind standing up if you connected with this church, if you're here because of WinShape camps? And it was probably over half the church that stood up because they had some connection with WinShape. So really fun to see the fruit of that.
Yeah, that's so cool.
Well, and so much fruit even now, you're long past moved on to other things, but that ministry is still thriving and growing and
that's right.
impacting people and
expanding.
Yeah, it really is. So that's a beautiful thing. But David, I think that some of the people listening might know about Impact 360 and be very familiar with it. And others are like, I have no idea what you're talking about. What is Impact 360? So can you tell us just what is it? And then after you do that, talk about the Fellows program specifically that you oversee so that they can understand the difference.
Yeah, in a nutshell, Impact 360 is a discipleship program, and we focus on biblical worldview, discipleship, leadership training. It started as just a gap year back in 2006, and that was a really unfamiliar concept. Now, most people know what a gap year is, but over the years, the Lord has just opened up doors for us to have a summer program that's really intentionally focused on some of the leadership and worldview training. And then we have our Fellows program. That's the one that I work with. It's our 9-month gap year program. We have what we call the 3 Initiative, which is an ongoing discipleship coaching program for students who are in a university setting. They can continue to use the things that they learned here and have a coach that's helping them to think through how to intentionally influence their campus. And we have a master's program that we call our residency. It's a 2-year MA in leadership. And those students are not only learning a ton in the classroom, but they also have hands-on experience in the Fellows program. So yeah, like you said, I work with Fellows. That's 9 months. And it's a blast. It's a really intense 9 months. Our students get 18 hours of college credit while they do that. They are learning about biblical worldview. They're learning about discipleship. Not only, we'll talk about this some today, not only are they discipled, but they are really being trained to be able to disciple their peers once they leave. And so we have a lot of fun peak experiences. We take them on trips to Salt Lake City to talk with Mormons. We're taking them to Washington, D.C. to hear from senators. We go to Brazil during the year. It's a blast.
Yeah. And all of this is in Pine Mountain.
It is.
Georgia. Yep. And then you also have summer experiences. So really, the summer experiences are middle school and high school?
Summer experiences are high school. We have a 1-week program that's early high school, and then a 2-week program for typically juniors and seniors. And that's really introducing some of these concepts. So in the 1-year week, we might kind of expose them to what is leadership, what is worldview. As they get into the 2-week track, they'll go up to a mosque and they'll learn more about what does Islam teach and how to engage a Muslim with a gospel conversation. They'll learn more about how to explain their faith, defend their faith. They also do whitewater rafting and high ropes courses and things like that. So it's a lot of fun, but that's been a great entry point for a student maybe who is wanting to take their faith a little more seriously and start learning about the ways that God's gifted them and things they might do in their future. And some of those students come all the way through the 9-month program and beyond, and some do a couple weeks of camp and then launch out into other things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, some of our Rockstar staff have been through the program before that we hire as camp counselors. Yeah. And I'm already praying over my kids that they will be a part of Impact one day when they're older, because I've seen the fruits from what you're doing, and it is good work. And so,
I appreciate that. I often talk with parents who I was in a conversation just a week ago with a seminary professor, and he said, we've been really intentional in raising our kids. I wish that they just had a little bit more time to really kind of understand who they are and to put down roots into their faith as their own, and not just, what mom and I have taught. And I said, well, we'd love to have them for a year. It's a really great environment to grow, without maybe being exposed to some of the ideas and ideologies that they'll get on a college campus typically. Yeah. But also outside of the wings of protection of mom and dad as they start to to move out onto their own.
Yeah, that's so wise. I remember my freshman year of college, I was like, wait a second, who am I? Who has God made me to be? And so I love that you specifically, your programming is to walk alongside your students in such a beautiful way that can equip them for essentially ministry work, you know, in their own hearts. So you, Impact 360 specifically, you've been working with Barna on Gen Z research. And so I would love to know, in all of your findings about Gen Z, what is like one or two thing that stood out to you most in the research that they came out with?
Sure. Yeah, we just wrapped up our third volume of Gen Z research. It's the green book that you see behind me. And it's been interesting because Gen Z kind of spans 2020 with COVID. I mean, there are some big things that have happened since we even began studying and working with them. So I would encourage anybody who's interested in this topic, pick those books up and you can kind of see, even in the third volume, it talks through the progression. Not surprisingly, gender and sexuality are major themes that come up in the research, not only because they're growing up in a society that's pushing to redefine everything, but also in the sense that we're starting to see really dramatically different responses between male and female respondents. So on any question that would kind of lean toward a more progressive or liberal or a more conservative answer, the young men are starting to lean more conservative and the young women are starting to lean more liberal. And we're seeing that gap widen. So I thought that was really interesting coming out of this most recent study. It's easy to focus on the negative. There are a lot of things I love about Gen Z. They're creators. They're not scared to just go put their hands on something and innovate or take on some entrepreneurial things. I'm also encouraged. This is a hard one, but I just see Gen Z really longing for in-person connection. I would say to any parent, don't be fooled by the AirPods. You know, they realize that they're too plugged in. They see what that's doing to their generation. Sometimes they don't know how to disconnect so much, but they recognize that the value of in-person connection. My dad is a high school history teacher, and he recently asked his seniors, I think at the beginning of the year, he was saying, when you get to graduation and you look back on this year, what are some things that you want to be true, or could you intentionally build for that? And he said so many members of his classes said, I hope that by the end of this year, I will have had more dinner conversations with my parents. Like, I want to do dinner together as a family. That's really what I want to spend my senior year, you know? And so I just thought, that's not always what you get on the surface when you're interacting with a 16, 17-year-old. But they really crave that belonging, being known, and that personal connection. They're just not always sure how to get there.
That's good.
Don't be fooled by the AirPods. That's the quote I'm going to remember from you, David. Don't be fooled by the AirPods. And my little guy, he is different from the young man that you just mentioned. Every time we have a family dinner, he's like, do we have to eat together? And I always say, yes, we do.
Yeah.
Yes, we do. But maybe when he gets older, he'll want to more. That gives me hope.
I think that's right. I think even as they push away sometimes, they still have a lot of respect for mom and dad, and that family togetherness still means something.
Mm-hmm. And the research backs it. Sit down at the dinner table with your family with no devices,
right.
Make eye contact. Teach them the art of conversation. Yeah.
Yep.
Right.
You mentioned the Gen Z third volume. We'll definitely link that in the show notes for people. But there's another book that Impact 360 has just been like your bread and butter philosophy called Know, Be, Live. Is that right? That's what it's called. Right? Okay, perfect. Yep. I said it and I was like, oh my gosh, I'm scared.
It's right behind it.
Okay, great. Yes. We'll link that book in the show notes too. But talk about those three areas, Know, Be, Live, and help us understand, why that drives you guys, and then also how that could apply to us as parents.
Sure. When we talk about discipleship at Impact 360, that word gets used in a lot of different ways, and we tend to try to talk about a holistic approach to discipleship that engages the mind and the heart, and also when we talk about live, we're going to bring in how God has designed us to influence. And so I'll start with kind of the know portion of that. We want to help students really catch a vision for knowing God more deeply, for loving God with their mind, understanding reasons for faith. There's a lot of skepticism in Gen Z because either they're under the impression that there aren't good reasons for faith, or what they've seen is is hypocrisy, and they've been really impacted. It's created some skepticism because they say what I hear being taught is not the same as what I see being lived out. There's an opportunity there for that. You know, as soon as they encounter someone who genuinely lives as if the Bible is true, that's compelling to them because it's so different than maybe what they've seen in the past. But we want, to break those things down into age-appropriate conversations with our students. And I think that's a lot of what you guys are wanting to do too. A lot of your listeners are saying, how do I take some of this, what can get kind of heady in terms of apologetic, philosophical, worldview conversations, and break them down into conversations that really help kids think through the reasons for their faith, really can kind of bulletproof their faith in some ways. So we want them to think deeply about what they believe and realize there are good reasons for faith. Faith is not blind. And then we talk about B. That's a big emphasis. That's just in the fabric of what we do day to day. It's character formation, it's identity. We're about to go through a module with our students where we talk about what the gospel applied to life really means. The gospel has a category to deal with shame. The gospel has categories to deal with identity, to deal with insecurity, to deal with sin, and so once we apply those things to real life and actually put weight on what the gospel says is true, that's transformational. I mean, it's amazing to just see students get to this moment where they realize grace is real. God not only accepts me because I'm forgiven by Jesus, but he actually really likes me. He likes who he made me to be. That's life-changing. And then when we talk about live, a big piece of that for us is kind of recapturing a Christian vision for vocation and recognizing that whether the Lord has called you to be a pastor or an engineer or a professor or a psychologist, all of that is kingdom work because he designed us to be all the way back from Genesis to fill the earth, to subdue, to have dominion, and to be part of co-creating in his kingdom. So I think that's really empowering for students who feel like I want to be a believer, and I know that maybe I should share the gospel at work, but there's actually kingdom work to do just by doing good work and being a faithful believer who does things really excellently. So we get into a ton of fun topics with our students, and it's so fun to watch them grow, have a lot of aha moments over the course of the year, and start to build confidence, not only in who God made them to be, but also in why they believe what they believe and how they could then go and be a part of discipling the next generation.
That's so good. I also see a little bit of a connection between what we teach at camp with the head, the heart, and the hands.
Sure.
Model.
Absolutely.
That yours is the know and the be and the live. That's so good. So I know a few years ago at Impact, you made a pretty big shift in the way that you went about this idea of discipleship and helping students make it their own. And your learning can 100% impact us in our parenting. And so I would love for you to tell us what you did and how you think that could help us as parents look at it in a different, new way.
Sure. Yeah. For a lot of years, really since the beginning, part of what prompted our founders to start the program was Barna research about college students walking away from the church. And so it started with this question, how do we help to equip young people to hold on to their faith? And that was a good question that for a lot of years served us really well. Several years ago, I was not in the director role, but in an associate director position. And we were just having some conversations around Gen Z. Some of that research was coming out. And then we were watching students, I think, who were coming in with an undertone of skepticism and maybe a little bit of cynicism and saying, I want to believe, but I'm not sure that I buy into all this. My friends are telling me that Christianity is a fairy tale. And so I'm going to give it another chance. But that idea of helping them find good reasons to believe what they believe, in a certain sense, just kind of put them in a different type of consumeristic posture. And so we made an intentional shift to say, what if we really framed everything we do around equipping them to multiply? Because even if a student finds good reasons for faith during the program, and they say, okay, well, now I'm convinced that this is true, and I want to go out and I want to live for Jesus. If that never goes beyond them, then these trends that we're seeing in the Gen Z research of a declining biblical worldview, that will continue. And so we started asking the question, how do we equip students to go out and multiply the next generation? And that took a pretty big shift. It meant that every one of our students would meet one-on-one with a staff member for discipleship biweekly. And it meant that we were going to move through what we call the discipleship square, this framework that we're trying to help a student move from where we're typically doing most things for them and they're helping us, or they're watching. That's kind of where it starts. They're watching, and then we move to where they're helping us. We invite them into that. But we want to, over the course of our 9-month program, start handing things to them and supporting so that they're taking more responsibility, more ownership, and getting more training. So by the end of the year, our fellows are the ones who are leading the discipleship conversations. The fellows are the ones who are leading the Bible study. So we would say discipleship needs to be going somewhere. It is for you, but it's meant to go beyond you. And so I just would love to ask parents the question, what's your discipleship strategy for your kids? Is it to keep them out of trouble? Is it to help them hold on to faith? Or is it to equip them to multiply and advance the kingdom among the next generation? So as you're doing ministry stuff in your church or in your home or outside, are there ways that you can invite your kids into that discipleship square where they start getting to do it alongside you and eventually can start to launch on their own? So that's been a really good shift. And we are seeing students go out and do it. They're getting onto campuses and they're discipling their peers and leading Bible studies. And it's been awesome.
David, I think that's so good. And I think that's really the meat of what we're trying to get across today is that this idea of discipleship and making it stick for your kids is more than just head knowledge. It's not, I think that's where we go first, and that's where we kind of stay. And that's good. They need to know all of that head knowledge. That's the beginning of y'all's book. That's the beginning of Head, Heart, and Hands for us. But it's got to move past that. It's got to move into experiences and into everyday life. And I think that can be where the fun happens too.
Yeah, I would say joy too. Yeah. You say fun, like watch that just come a lot, like the connection of all three. Yeah, you could experience joy and fun,
faith and action, servant leadership, all of those kind of things. So I think that's great food for thought for us as parents to be thinking of, okay, it's more than just the head, which is great because I think also we can get overwhelmed by that or like, I didn't go to seminary. I don't know all of this information, and how am I supposed to share it with my children if I don't feel like I know it, and therefore, you feel paralyzed. But it's like, well, number one, you don't have to know everything, and number two, let's get out there and do it together, and that probably goes such a long way.
One of the best things that we do for our staff or our students is we're a worldview program, right? So we have a perfect excuse to go have spiritual conversations with people and just ask them, hey, can we ask you what you think about some of the big questions of life? What do you think happens when we die? What do you think is the purpose of life? Where do you think we came from? And you get into those conversations, and it's so good for provoking questions. It helps me realize I need to dig in a little bit and be able to better articulate how the Bible responds to these things, because the Bible has answers for all of it. And so that is something that's been so big for us as our students get out and have those spiritual conversations and share their faith. That does more than probably anything else in strengthening their faith.
Yeah. I love this conversation because we had to make a school shift for our daughter. And it's been the greatest opportunity and challenge and blessing all in one. That she was at a Christian school and we moved her to public school, and we have bumped up against the world and our beliefs and who she is. And we've had some really cool conversations about when we bump up against the world, and that her school was not her identity, but
that's right. Christ
in her is still the same wherever she goes to school and wherever she is in the world. And so, it's been a challenge and an opportunity, and we've had more really great conversations at home around who we are in Christ. And so I went from this like, let me bubble up kind of thing, which, it's school is going to be specific for each individual child. And so we just saw the need to switch her, and it's been a really cool growing opportunity for us and our family.
Yeah, the school question, that's a whole topic in and of itself.
Yeah.
But I love that for me, I think one of the biggest wins at Impact is when a student comes in and says, I feel equipped to, I wanted to go to a secular school, but I was nervous about that. I feel like I don't have to be nervous anymore. I can go do that.
Yeah,
So
confidence.
just the process, whether it's school or whether it's anywhere else, kids play sports and do activities, to be able to have those conversations with them and engage about, how do we talk about our faith in real life?
Yeah.
That's gold.
Yeah.
Okay, David, we're getting close to wrapping. As a parent, we can be really hard on ourselves, and we can put these expectations on ourselves and feel overwhelmed by them. It's hard. You get our kids whenever we've launched them out, they're 18, they're college age, they come to your program. And when we were preparing for this podcast, you told me, you said, I have a really neat story about parents and encouraging them, because again, I think we launch them and we're like, did I do a good job? Are they ready?
Right.
It can be really overwhelming, I think. I mean, I'm not there yet, but it's close. And so tell us that story and let that be an encouragement for our parents, I hope.
Yeah, I would love to. There are a few things more humbling than being a parent. I mean, if you really want to see where the Lord has work to do in sanctifying you, become a parent. And I think it is scary. I can only imagine at this stage what parents feel when they launch a student out and they're asking, have we done enough? Are they ready? There are always going to be wounds. There are always going to be, I think there's always questions as students are kind of figuring out how to take ownership of their own faith. Something I kind of chuckle at is, we have conversations with students and they have these really big, I keep using the phrase aha moments, but breakthroughs almost, where they're like, man, I have never thought about this before. No one's ever told me this. And I sit there thinking, I guarantee your parents have had this conversation with you multiple times. You just know this is something they've talked about with their parents. They just needed to hear it from a different voice. And so you may be doing all the right things as a parent. And just the Lord is at work. He's going to do his work in his time. But the thing, Amy, to your point, what I had shared was every year we do a retreat for our men and a separate retreat for our ladies, a biblical manhood and a biblical womanhood retreat. And I've been so encouraged in the past few years asking our men, specifically the young men in our program, who are some heroes for you? We talk about aspiring to be a biblical man. Who are some men that you look to in your life as models of this? We used to spend a lot of time on that retreat talking about kind of a wound that comes from absent fathers. And that there's always going to be some of that, I think. But more and more over the past few years, I've just seen so many young men who have said, my dad models this better than anyone I know. He's been emotionally present. He's been intentional. He has prayed for our family. He's been honest about what he doesn't know. Like I've seen him fail and just entrust the Lord with that. He's been faithful in leading our family devotionally. And that's just a huge boost to me as a dad to think like, okay, there are other dads out there who are doing it well, and they're launching young men who are equipped to go live boldly for the sake of the gospel. So I praise the Lord for that, and also just hope that that's an encouragement as a lot of your listeners, your families are doing their best and just faithfully leaning in. That's having an impact on Gen Z.
And they're not going to tell you, but David will tell you.
That's right.
Yeah. They tell someone else.
Someone else. Yeah.
And then it wasn't until I launched where I was like, whoa, I'm so grateful for my parents.
Right.
I was in a season of doubting, and I never really told you how wonderful you were.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's a weird shift happens when you become a parent. You're like, I can't believe my parents did this. They cared so much for me, and I didn't really realize the impact until I became a mom or a dad in your shoes. So, David, man, this is so good. I'm so thankful that you have come and shared with us today. We like to end with a question to encourage our parents to really get the conversation started at home, at the dinner table, before bed, or if they've got them trapped, their kids got them trapped in the car. That we can further the conversation in their homes. And so, as you know, every generation has some slang words, and that you're like, this divides us more than anything. I remember
I'm learning them all the time.
Yes. Drip or dripping or Riz or like
bet is the new one for my kid. Bet.
It's like, what are you saying? I don't know. Who are you? And so I feel that as a dividing factor for us. Even when I was a teenager, my parents, I was like, you just don't understand me. You know, I'm speaking a different language. And they would admit, we don't even know what you're talking about. So I want to end with a question. How is your generation different from my generation? We know that the slang words will probably be different. The fashion is different. And so we cannot wait to hear what your kids say. What is the difference from my generation than yours? So thanks, David, for being with us. And thanks for listening. We'll see you guys next time.
Thank you guys so much. This was a blast.
Yay.